Well, hello everyone. You show you right here. It's like talking for federal student aid. Most of us have like which heard of the type of a program arrangement. Talk about if it's going to be offered for any students or anybody who's getting ready to graduate, or like if they're trying to get enough income together to pay back for any type of loan repayments. But on the other hand, that you see right here are some images right here of me, and I know like with anybody, it's like for any questions that more likely we may have so far as like for like say for repayments though. But some of those questions could be related to like maybe financial aid. Some of them could be maybe related to where that maybe the type of payment methods that they accept as well. But on the other hand, like I talk about right here, is basically that for basically what the types of arrangements that can be arranged about paying back like the type of student loans. And I know like what most of us students here would probably think is to where that yeah that if most like I mentioned before is talk about for a game of Monopoly, and we all know is like it's not really a bank account to where you can just withdraw as many times as you like. So you're like more into where that you're for like federal student aid, that the paperwork that which I know I've seen a lot of it on file, and thinking about is to where that yeah that when was the last time that you may have seen it, that amount of paperwork, especially that the kind that costs money. And during that time, those years ago, I guess it was, if anything, it was maybe related to anything about, maybe about that, something that you may have bought from the book fair, or like, but still that for like with any student that if you cannot afford something right away, then you may have to borrow it. And sometimes, and I know sometimes there are some students that they may say is to where that sometimes that they want to argue a lot of times about as to where that they think that they got enough to pay for something, find out that they don't later on. So that's whenever that they just really want to the type of a if you want to call it like the frustration as well as the argument comes for like if you don't have enough money, then you may have to borrow a little bit more, or like come up with like working out more. But really that a lot of things out there that do cost money. But on the other hand, like for student aid though, that the way I think about it is to where that's basically like a program to where you would have like a be connected like with the counselor, and then you will be able to discuss with them about the payment arrangements, and as well as anything that about any updates going on in the database as well. So it's like papers that they usually that like for any student that they would be getting like any type of papers, if it's going to be online, they would be getting detailed information about for like the type of grace periods and other type of arrangements, to where that giving you enough time to be able to pay back on the student loans especially. And I know so many information I did see on some of that federal student aid that they mentioned about us to where that for how long it will take just to be able to get the money together, and as well as after about maybe 5 or 10 years based on for say after after you graduate or whenever you leave school or like anything like that. But and I know like with any students that they may warrant to where that the question could go by is to where like for federal student aid is that let's just say that if there was a student that was attending school for at least one semester, but then they decide to leave due to like an urgent situation, and they may warrant to where that they may not have completed all the courses that they should have completed, or that they just knowing about for anything that they weren't trying to be clear about as well. So that goes by say the type of questions as to where that if anybody were warned, or yeah that you start working something and all of a sudden something else comes up to where you're not able to finish it, or that the amount of money that you need to provide as well. And some students that may weren't, or that yeah that you were going to school at one time, but then think about it to where that it was like we say it's like a for anything that more likely that costs a little bit more money, especially just to be able to get rolled back in, or if like any students that may say that they drop out or so. But really that it just seems like half the time for like federal student aid is that really is it really offered to those students after they complete their courses and whenever they graduate, or if they're still enrolled in school, or if they're not enrolled in school. So sometimes it seems like it's all about is to where that if you want to call it negotiation, as to where that you're agreeing for like whatever amount that you got to pay back, especially. And I know, like with anybody, that whenever anybody could say that like whenever whenever you're trying to start, that sometimes if you don't have enough money, then more likely that you can go out and that you can get like like a student loan, and thinking as to where that any type of aid that more likely that is offered. And really, the types of programs that are available out there, which I know that they say is that you're able to talk to somebody and able to work out payments as well, but some that may not agree to where that really that do you want to go ahead and have this done and taken care of within 6 months of the period, the grace period or so. And some that may say is like, yeah, that if you're having about up to maybe about between 20 and maybe 40,000 or so dollars, and we say and like student loan debt or something like that. And I know this right here seems like a big number while I was typing this. This right here seems like a big number. I'm like, I guess you could say you had the extra zeros right here, but on your hand, this right here seems like a big number. So if I were to be working the math right here and thinking necessarily to where if it's, would say between $20,000 and anybody likely weren't, to where that right there looks like about $2 million, $2 million or something like that, minus one. So that's just a thing that if we were to be doing the math correctly, and then I think like anything that we would need to update, especially you have right here is a picture right here was me right here, like with the American flag. So I know like any students, if they would be working part-time, that they may be told to where you're only allowed to borrow, if anything, about $20,000. So that's just the thing, is to where that working out payment arrangements, especially for student aid, some students that may think as to where that if they want it back all at once, or they just take a one payment at a time. But sometimes though, it's like you're like Warren, to where that some students after they graduate, that's something that they just don't want to deal with. But on the other hand too, that I guess you could say that I've been kind of prepared for it. Really, I'm like that I waited nearly over 6 years just to go back to school. One of those reasons was because of the fact about I knew that it was going to be expensive. That's what I heard, that college was expensive. So just knowing about whenever I was ready to go back, I was ready to go back to learn some more, especially, and knowing about the different options that were available also. So whenever we think about this, that we're like Warren toward it. For a student like me, if I were to be going to school and thinking about his tour, like you keep an eye on the mail as well, is like to be careful about how much money that is spent and how much money that is being borrowed, especially. So if we have heard of that before, to where if you were to get in some practice with some play money, and you're like, well, with play money, you may find that maybe in the closet or on the floor or something like that. It really don't mean nothing, but then on your hand, that you're like Warren, where if you would actually get some practice with it and thinking that it's like it's worth something, that more likely that it's important, it needs to come back to where it was, where it came from, especially. But on your hand, like if it was like, let's say, belonged to a kit, a money kit or anything like that. But on your hand, that with understanding about the student financial, the student aid, it's like if it's going to be, say, the federal student aid, that for any student, that basically like that the paperwork basically knows like it's basically assistance to help it, to where that you would be able to contact anybody for any questions about anything, as well as the detailed information about making payments at a time, and as well as other options as well. So I would have like a booklet that would show different payment options, as well as their policies about if you're going to be a little bit late on the payment, and then this is what they charge, as well as like a little chart, just to where the chart to where that this is the payment, the cost of the repayments that you would need to make during this time. So I know that some people that may say is that this seems like right here, like I mentioned before, like a big headache. But if we're like Warren, where you're dealing with a bill, and sometimes that I can maybe use like for 12 hours, that maybe a lot of things can maybe change in about 12 hours. But on the other hand, that you're like Warren, to where that you're making small payments at a time, and you kind of gotten quite a bit used to it, to where you're kind of a student like me would be kind of waiting for the fact about, maybe if you overpaid, and then maybe that there's money supposed to be coming back to you especially. So I know that with me though, that I didn't start out with what you call this this $22,000, you're saying, savings amount. I'm like, with anybody, any student, they did not start out with no 25,000. Did not even start out with 25 million. Did not even start out with 25 million just to be able to have saved up, just to be able to go to school. So sometimes it's going to be, kind of rough. But then the way I think about it though is like, really, work the math, and I'm sure it's not so bad. But really, that like with anybody, that they're waiting to know about whenever the paychecks are going to be there, not really about when the bills are going to be there. And you're like worried to where, yeah, you've seen plenty of the bills, but what about the paychecks? So if anybody were worried to where, yeah, by the time you do get a paycheck, that you may still see something wrong, huh? But on the other hand, they talk about here, for we talk about the 20,000, and say you got the math problem right here, and talk about, say, for the federal student aid, may I make 25. And thanks for watching. Have a great day.